Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Dr. Herbert Harris, and this is Success Mentorship Call number 116. And our topic for today is getting out of a rut. Ooh, I tell you, folks, that's something that's been on a lot of our minds. As you know, our all of our classes are based on our book, The 12 Universal Laws of Success, which is, of course, available on our website, www.the12uls.com. That's www.the12uls.com, or on our other website, herbertharris.com. This topic, getting out of a rut, has really been on my spirit. I know that those of us who are, we'll say, content creators, that when we get into that vibration of creating content, sometimes we'll find ourselves stuck. And a rut is a habit or pattern of behavior that has become dull and unproductive, but is hard to change. A habit or pattern of behavior that has become dull and unproductive, but is hard to change. Wow. I tell you, that really describes a rut, doesn't it? And right now, in this period of pandemic and confinement, so many of us have gotten into a rut, that you can't do the things you usually do. You can't go the places you used to go. And so as a result, we can get stuck in a rut and almost be, unhappy. And so this message, how to get out of a rut, I think is going to help a lot of us change some things in our lives. There's a beautiful quote that I love, and anytime you're in a rut or anytime you're in a situation that you're really not that excited about, I think of this quote, and it says, "Be thankful for the bad things in life. They open your eyes to see the good things you weren't paying attention to before." Wow. Let's say that again. Be thankful for the bad things in life. They open your eyes to the good things you weren't paying attention to before. So very often when we're in a rut, it literally has us focus on the right then, what's going on right there. Sometimes you think about what's the difference between being in a rut and being in a hole. When you're in a hole, that means that you've been working at a project and it's just not working. You've been digging and doing whatever, and it's not working. And when you're in a hole, I guess the visual is, if you're in a hole, stop digging, look up and get out. When you're in a rut, it's more of a continuous, consistent thing. It's something that goes on and on and on. And so when you're in that rut may be a job that you absolutely hate, but you go back and forth to work each and every day. In the old days, they used to say, you work 40 years to get a gold watch and a pension. That's not happening anymore. Okay. And so that rut may be a job that you keep going to, that you're just not excited about, but you can't seem to leave it. The interesting thing about it is, I think your employers can sense your level of commitment because they only pay you enough to keep you from quitting. You may be in the rut of a relationship, a bad relationship, a relationship that's not happy, that's not fulfilling, a marriage, a partnership, some type of relationship where you really don't feel good about it. It may have started out all right. Interesting about relationships, every relationship seems to start with excitement. Everybody just loves the other person, they love whatever they're doing. And then somehow, as it is revealed who people really are, you can find yourself in a rut where the joy is gone, where the happiness is gone, even where it's painful. Sometimes you may be in the relationship of a business or a profession. You've been working at it, but you're not getting the results you expected. It's not happening the way that you thought it would happen. So all of these are really, you might say, examples of a rut, but they have a consistent theme. And that theme is that you keep doing something over and over, and you're not getting the results that you desire, but you don't do anything about it. The key point is that when you're in a situation that you don't like, that's not giving you what you desire, and you stay in that situation, there's a subtle acceptance of the situation. And once you accept it, you literally accept everything that comes with it. So a job that's not fulfilling, you accept it and you keep going to it. You're never going to get a raise. You're going to be miserable every day. A relationship that you accept, the people aren't going to change. The situation's not going to change. It's not going to get better. Or the business, you accept the business. You never get out of that mediocre level. And it reminds you of a concept. If you're in a rut, you're there because you choose to be there. And that's kind of a hard one a little bit because we don't like to necessarily acknowledge that. But I think of a story of there was some factory workers, and there was a fellow who came to work every day. He had his lunch pail. He'd come in, and lunchtime they'd stop, and he'd open his pail, and he'd go, "Ugh, peanut butter and jelly again." So finally, one of his coworkers says to him, he says, "Listen, why don't you tell your wife to make a different sandwich, that you don't like the peanut butter and jelly?" And he says, I don't have a wife. He said, "Well, then who's making your sandwiches?" He says, "I'm making the sandwiches." And so being in a rut is a lot like that factory worker. You're in a situation that you don't like, but you really created it by inactivity or by doing whatever you've been doing without making changes. So if that is the case, and it is, then what do we do? How do we frame this? Well, we have to accept that we're in a rut by not doing something to change the situation. That we're accepting the condition, and probably the only thing we really do is complain about it. Sometimes people are in a rut and don't even know it. But I think for most of us, everybody today that's sharing this message, if you're in a rut, you know it. How do you know you're in a rut? You feel it. You're unhappy. You're unfulfilled. You might even be in pain. There comes a point where you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. You stop complaining about it, and you finally do something about it. You know the story I often tell of the dog. That a fellow was coming down the road one day, and he saw a dog sitting there on the porch, and the dog was just whimpering. So the guy asked, there was a man sitting in the rocking chair, looked like he was clearly the owner of the dog, and he said, "Well, what's wrong with the dog?" He said, "The dog's sitting on a nail." I said, "Whoa." And the dog's just whimpering in pain. And so he says, "Well, why doesn't the dog get off the nail?" And the fellow in the rocking chair says, "Because it doesn't hurt badly enough." And so I challenge each and every one of you today. What nail are you sitting on? What nail are you sitting on? What situation are you enduring that's painful, that's unrewarding, that's unexciting, that everything you liked about it is gone, and yet you sit there experiencing that pain? So what do we do when we finally recognize, hey, I guess that first key is to say, if I'm unhappy and I keep doing the same things over and over, I must be in a rut. Yes, you are. Once you recognize that you're in a rut, I like to think of it, I call it the 4 F's. There are 4 ways to approach this. F1, you can see your condition and you can forget about it. You can operate in total denial. You can pretend that everything is okay. So on that job, you can realize that you're not getting a raise, that it's not going to happen, and you continue to do what you've been doing at the same level that you've been doing it. In that relationship, the pleasure's gone, everything's gone, but you deny, well, it's not that bad, you know. A lot of times people be in a relationship. Reverend Ike used to tell a story, and he said the lady used to complain about her husband all the time. And he says, well, why don't you leave him? She says, Reverend Ike, the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know. So you can forget it. You can just be in a state of denial about your condition, the situation of being in a rut. The second F is you can fight it. When you fight it, you act like it's somebody else's fault. I'm on this job, I'm in a rut, but it's somebody else's fault. They won't pay me enough. I'm in this job, I'm in a rut because I don't know the boss's friends. I don't operate in that circle because they won't give me a promotion. In that relationship, I'm waiting for him to change. I'm waiting for her to change. In that business, you're saying, man, I'm going to find that superstar sooner or later. You fight it. The third F is to flee it. When you're in a rut, and you know people like this, you're in that they have a job and they're excited about the job, and 6 months later, they left the job. What happened? Oh, I didn't like this about it. They always get to a point where stuff changes and they flee. They go to another job. You know it in relationships. I have some friends that are, I guess, serial lovers. You know, like I can predict it about every 12 to 18 months, they'll be intensely in love with somebody. This is the best person on the earth since sliced bread. And then, oh man, I can't stand them. I'm leaving them. And another 6 months, they're in another relationship with somebody else. Even people in business. We have these serial entrepreneurs, the people who go from business to business to business and never achieve the thing that they were seeking, the financial rewards, the growth rewards. And then the fourth F is to face it. When you confront the rut that you're in, you're now on the path to getting out of that rut. See, once you recognize that you're in that rut and you choose to face it, then you put yourself in that powerful position where you only have to make a decision for change. So let's remember this, folks. The key to getting out of a rut is to, one, realize that you're in a rut, and then two, make a decision for change. When I talk about this, we recognize a great power that we have. That we are where we are in life because of the decisions we make and the actions we take based on those decisions. There's no power greater than the power of a made-up mind. The moment you make that decision to get out of that rut, everything changes. The moment you say, if it's to be, it's up to me. If I'm going to get out of this situation, it's in my hands. I've got to do it. Nobody can pull you out of a rut. People can help, but you have to act out of a rut. You have to do something to get out of a rut. Now, definitely help is important, but it all starts with that decision that you make to say, this is not for me. That decision that you make to say, mediocrity is not for me. I can do better. I deserve more. I like to think of the story of David and Goliath, and let me couple that. There was a great politician, Adam Clayton Powell, and he was a Harlem congressman, very powerful man. And when he began his political career, he had a speech and he said, "What's in your hands?" And the essence was that whatever your condition, whatever rut you may be in, whatever may be your situation in life, that you have in your hands all that you need to get anything that you want. And it takes me to the story of David and Goliath. If you think about that, this is an allegory, but think about this. David and Goliath. David, the young shepherd boy. Goliath, the giant, the Philistine. I mean, the Goliath representing everything that keeps you bound up, everything that keeps you in a rut. And we know the story that the Goliath came and the people decided that they would send a champion to fight Goliath, and whoever won, the people would either be imprisoned or enslaved, or they'd walk away free people. And, you know, that's one of those kind of situations that people don't normally sign up for. You know, if there's a Goliath out there that says like, well, who's going to go and fight Goliath? Like, not me. People start ducking and dodging. But David, the young shepherd boy, made a decision that he was the one to go against Goliath. And so that is how we are. When we find ourselves in that rut, we have to make a decision to face it. Now, when David made that decision to face Goliath, that rut, that situation standing between him and freedom, he looked around to assess his situation. And he didn't have a sword, he didn't have a spear, he didn't have a K, was it AK-47? David looked around to see what he had. He looked around and he found a stone. In our lives, when we're in a rut, we can look around to find a stone. And a stone is really a symbol of deep understanding and faith. As they say, a rock, you can stand on this rock. A stone is a truth, an absolute truth that you have absolute faith in. So David looked around and he found a stone. You notice this, he didn't go to college. He didn't say, oh my goodness, I need to go to military school. I got to fight this giant. He didn't make complaints about, well, I've never fought a giant before. I don't have the experience. I don't have the background. You know what I'm saying, folks, that when you're in a rut, there's that negative side of you that wants to keep you there, that has you making excuses. I don't have the degrees. I don't have the experience. I don't know the people. And so that you do as Sister Mary, you stay where you are because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. The negative assumption is that there's a devil. So now, David then took that rock and he looked at Goliath. And one very important point, when you're coming out of your rut, you can't doubt. If you doubt yourself, you won't do it. When David picked up the rock and had his slingshot, there was not a moment of doubt that he said, oh, this really looks bad. He's really big. Okay. David's mindset was, he looked at how big Goliath was rather than say, hey, this rock can't hurt him. David looked up and said, man, as big as he is, how can I miss? And so he took action. That's the other symbol. When there's a rut, when there's something standing in front of you between you and where you want to go, you have to take action. So he slung that rock around, and that rock of solid belief and faith in his own abilities. Not only that, but solid belief in his own destiny. You see, David made a decision that whatever his life was, that there was more to it, that he was put here for more, that he was put here to do more, to be more, to have more, to impact more. And so each and every one of us, when we're in that rut, Think about why we were really put here. The Creator didn't put us here to suffer, to starve, to go back and forth for 40 years on a job that we hate. Didn't put us here to be in a relationship that's painful, that's hurtful, that's unrewarding. Didn't put us here to be in a business that goes nowhere. You have to believe that you were put here to do great things. And so David made that decision. He relied on what he had in his hands. He took action, and he destroyed Goliath and got out of the rut of slavery and imprisonment. When we make that decision, folks, it can't be mamby-pamby. It can't be one of those kind of decisions where you say, well, I think I can do it. I'm not sure, but I think I can. It's got to be a solid decision, just like Cortez. When Cortez, the great explorer, was in Mexico and he wanted to get the gold, and he had his ships, and he had 600 troops with him, but there were over 10,000 Mexican Indians who wanted to kill him. And he wanted to motivate his troops so that they would fight harder, so that they would not take no for an answer, so that they would not flee, they would not forget it. So what did he do? He burned the ships. So there was no way to escape unless they were victorious. So when you come out of that rut, you have to have that same type of commitment, that same type of, I can do this. This is for me. I deserve it. And so now, how do we get out of that rut? What do we do to get out of a rut? Well, step one is to realize that you're in a rut, but that there's something better for you, that you were put here for a purpose. And so if you're experiencing that temporary setback, remember that quote said, be thankful for the bad things in life because they open your eyes to the good things that you weren't paying attention to. Sometimes when you're in that rut now, just being unhappy and in pain and in fear, and that you stimulate something inside and say, this is not for me. Step two, you must identify the challenge. You must look at the rut to see what it is. When David was confronted with Goliath, there was no doubt of who he had to fight and what he had to do. And so when we're in a rut, we have to find, what is that Goliath? What is that thing that's stopping us? What is that thing that's blocking the way? You see, you can't fix it if you don't face it. And so when you determine what the Goliath is, maybe in your job, it's a fear that you've had, a deep fear inside that you can't get the position, that you don't know enough, that you don't have the right education. Maybe in that relationship, the Goliath is a feeling of unworthiness, that, nobody loves me, and that whatever I'm in right now, I better accept this because I can't do better. Maybe in business, that Goliath is an acceptance of mediocrity, that you're never going to get what you want. You just keep going through the motions. So it's a problem. When we say identify that Goliath, I recommend that you make a list of the things you don't like about your situation. See, if you can't fight it, if you can't face it, you can't fix it. Make a list of the things you don't like about your job, about your relationship, about your business. Because once you make a list of that things, and now you can see the Goliath that you must attack. If it's lack of education and experience on that job, you say, okay, now I see what it is. Let me go to night school. Let me get some additional training. Let me make some new relationships, some new people. In those relationships, you look at that. I don't like a person who treats me bad, who talks bad to me. As a matter of fact, anybody that I have to make an excuse for having them in my life, I need to get rid of them in the first place. That list helps you determine exactly what's holding you back. Look for clues. Depression, drug use. Some people get trapped in a lifestyle. That is their Goliath. They spend so much time chasing brand names. And the real problem is how they feel inside, that they feel like there are external things that they need to define themselves. Once you've identified that Goliath by making those lists, step 3 is to make a blanket decision that whatever this rut is, you created it, either by choice or by lack of choice. You see, you can't, there's no way to not make a choice. When you choose to not do anything, that's a choice. You choose inaction, just as you choose action. It says, choose this day whom you will serve. You can choose serve action, or you can choose to serve inaction. Each thing that you choose to serve becomes a seed out of which grows your future reality. You know, the nature of the universe is the choices that you make determines the actions that you take, which then creates the world that you experience. So look at this decision that you have made to change everything, and think about how you would like it to be. So just as you made a list of all the things that you didn't like about your situation, make a list now of the things that you would like it to be, how you would like your job to be, how you would like to be respected, how you would like to get the salary you want, how you would like to progress along that job. Make a list of the relationship, what you want in a relationship, a person who honors you, who listens to you, who respects you, who cares about you. Make a list of the things you're looking for in a business. You're looking for a business where maybe you have to train more, where you can leverage your time. This step, this blanket decision of acknowledging that you created the rut and now looking at what you want to replace it with is critical. Step 4. Look at the uncomfortable truth. And that uncomfortable truth is this, that the decisions you make in creating that rut comes from something inside, comes from pain inside, comes from feelings of inadequacy inside, comes from fears inside, comes from past hurts inside, comes from past failures inside. You see, once you look at that uncomfortable truth and you say, if it's to be, it's up to me, and whatever it is, I created it, you can then get an understanding of how this process happened. Maybe as a child, you lived in an environment of criticism and negativity. And so as a result, you've developed a life that you live in a ball where you're afraid to step out, afraid to do something different, afraid to go for it. But this process, these uncomfortable truths, the moment one of the interesting things about fear and negativity is the moment you shine the light of understanding on them, they scurry like roaches in the night when you turn the light on. Number 5, find a person to model. Remember I said, nobody can pull you out of a rut, but they can help you. When you find a person who's been there, who's done what you're trying to do, who can help you, who can advise you, and you make that decision, then you put the mastermind power to work. You see, there are certain powers you can access by yourself, but there are mastermind powers, the I am powers, that when you can create a relationship with another person, when it says, when 2 or more minds are gathered on one accord, I am among them, that power that magnifies your energy. So find a person who you can model, who can guide you, who can mentor you. Number 6, learn to say yes. Many times we're in a rut because we said, no, I don't want to go for the new promotion. No, I don't want to get out of this relationship. No, I'm not going to work 80 hours a week to make my business successful. Learn to say yes. Yes to new activities. Yes to new experiences. Yes to new relationships. Yes to new approaches. Number 7, help someone else. It's interesting. You're never in a rut by yourself. That even in relationships, it may look like it's just a two-person relationship. But if you look around, there's always somebody else similarly situated. There's something about the harmonics of life that people have common experiences. And so when you can help someone else get out of their rut, it strengthens you. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you confirm one another's aspirations and desires, and you complement and you uplift. And once again, that mastermind principle works. Number 8, to remember this, there's a spiritual principle that says, to all things, there's a season, a time to live, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to harvest. And so whatever your situation, no matter how bad it is, it's only for a season. Only you can perpetuate it in your thinking, in your choices, but only you can end it in your thinking and in your choices. And then finally, step 9, change your routine. You see, one of the things about being in a rut, it's like a type of habit. It's like a type of sameness of thought, of activity, of relationship. So the moment you change your routine, the moment you take a new step, the moment you decide that I'm going to get up earlier, the moment you start changing the routines, you change your habits. And when you change your habits, you change your outcomes. So my friends, today has been a gift from you to me, because in preparing for this talk, I had to look at some of the ruts that I'm in. And I asked that when you complete this today, to look at some of the ruts that you're in. Look at the Goliaths that you're facing. And remember this, that you have the power to make change in your life. You have the power to create life exactly the way you want it to do. Follow these 9 steps. Realize that you're in a rut. Identify the challenges that are keeping you in that rut. Make a blanket decision to do whatever it takes to get out of that rut. Look at that uncomfortable truth inside, or what are those negative emotions and feelings inside that have been holding you captive. Find someone to model who can guide and mentor you. Learn to say yes to new things, to new experiences. Help someone else to create that harmonic of strength. Remember that you're only stuck for a moment, that even this will pass away, and change your routines so that you create new habits. My friends, when you can use these principles to get out of the rut of your life, of your job, of your relationships, of your business, of your thinking, of whatever situation you may be experiencing, you have the power to live your life by design, knowing that the best is yet to come. And so it is.